Billionaire dad gives a ride to a bride, unaware she ran away from her wedding. What happens is surreal. The sound of rain hitting the windshield of the grey sedan was almost hypnotic. Noah adjusted his hands on the steering wheel and slowed down. The secondary road that cut through the county was darker than usual. Half the streetlights had burned out weeks ago, and the city hadn't sent anyone to fix them yet. The heavy drops fell hard, creating small rivers that ran along the sides of the asphalt. The car's headlights struggled to cut through the curtain of water, revealing only a few feet ahead. Noah knew that road well. He drove the same route every day coming home from work. "Daddy, are we there yet?" Sophie's voice broke the silence in the car. Noah looked in the rearview mirror. The 5-year-old girl was leaning against the window, her blonde hair stuck to the back of her neck from the heater's steam. Her blue eyes sparkled with the reflection of the dashboard lights. "About 20 more minutes. Princess, are you sleepy?" "Not really." Sophie rubbed her nose on the foggy window. "Can I draw here?" "You can, but just for a little bit. Then you have to wipe it with your sleeve, okay?" Noah smiled for the first time all day. It had been a long afternoon at the office, dealing with issues that seemed endless. Endless meetings, contracts to review, phones that wouldn't stop ringing. Sometimes he wondered if all the effort, all the rush, was worth it. But he just had to look at Sophie, and the answer was clear. Yes, it was. The little girl was his reason for waking up every morning, for fighting for a better future, for continuing to live even when the longing for his wife tightened in his chest. The rain intensified. The heavy drops hammered the car roof like small, insistent fists, creating a noise that almost drowned out the sound of the engine. Noah turned the windshield wipers to maximum speed, but visibility was still poor. The radio crackled softly, playing a country song Noah didn't recognize. Sophie seemed to like the gentle rhythm, bobbing her head slightly as she drew abstract shapes on the foggy glass. "Look, Daddy, I made a star," she said, proud of her crooked drawing. "It's beautiful, sweetie. You're a true artist." Sophie smiled and went back to concentrating on her work. Noah took advantage of his daughter's distraction to speed up a little. He wanted to get home soon, take a hot shower, and maybe watch a movie with Sophie before she went to bed. "Daddy, that woman in the rain." Sophie's voice had a tone of urgency that made Noah brake automatically. The car skidded slightly on the wet road before he regained control. He followed his daughter's gaze and saw a ghostly figure walking on the side of the road. A woman. She was walking slowly, as if each step was a tremendous effort. Her movements were mechanical, almost robotic, as if she were in a trance. What was most striking wasn't the fact that she was alone on a deserted road at 10 at night, in a storm. It was what she was wearing. A wedding dress. The white fabric was completely soaked, clinging to the woman's body like a second skin. The skirt, which had probably been voluminous and elegant, now stuck to her legs, making every step a struggle. She held her arms crossed over her chest in a desperate attempt to protect herself from the cold. Her blonde hair, which had probably been carefully styled hours ago, now stuck to her face and shoulders like wet ribbons. Even from a distance, and in the torrential rain, Noah could see that she was young, maybe in her late 20s. Noah pulled the car over to the shoulder, his heart beating faster. What on earth was a bride doing there, alone in the rain? "Can we help her, Daddy?" Sophie had unbuckled and leaned forward, held back by her seatbelt. "She's getting all wet. She's going to get sick." Noah hesitated. All his protective fatherly instincts screamed at him to speed up and drive away. He didn't know this woman. He didn't know why she was there, dressed like that, in the middle of nowhere. She could be dangerous. She could be on the run from the police. It could be a trap. But when he looked at the solitary figure walking in the pouring rain again, he saw something that made him change his mind. She didn't look dangerous. There was nothing threatening in her slow, tired movements. She looked lost. She looked broken. She looked like someone who had lost everything. And there was something else. The way she was hugging herself, as if trying to physically hold herself together, reminded Noah of his own darkest moments after Emma's death. He recognized the silent despair, the pain that was too great to be expressed. Noah rolled down the driver's side window. The rain immediately came in, wetting his face and shirt. "Do you need a ride?" he shouted, trying to make his voice heard over the noise of the storm. The woman stopped. She turned slowly, as if she was sure she was hearing things. When she saw the car and realized someone had spoken to her, her eyes widened. They were blue, almost the same color as Sophie's, but there was a sadness in them so deep that Noah felt a pang in his chest. She stood still for a few seconds, clearly torn between accepting the help and continuing to walk. The rain continued to beat down on her, and Noah could see that she was shaking violently. "Please," he shouted again, "you're going to get sick if you stay out there." The woman looked ahead, in the direction she had been walking, then looked back at where she had come from. She seemed to be weighing her options, assessing risks that only she knew. Finally, with hesitant steps, she approached the car. Noah unlocked the doors and got out to help her. The rain soaked him in seconds, sticking his dress shirt to his body, but he didn't care. He opened the back door and gestured for her to get in. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice almost inaudible, hoarse as if she had been screaming for hours. As she bent to get into the car, Noah noticed details that worried him. Her feet were bare, the skin cut and dirty with earth and blood. She had walked a considerable distance. There were scratches on her arms, as if she had walked through bushes. The dress, besides being soaked, was torn in a few places. "Hi," said Sophie, as soon as the woman settled into the back seat. "I'm Sophie. Are you a princess?" The woman looked at the little girl, and she, Avanti, for the first time, gave a weak, shaky but genuine smile. "No, sweetie, I'm—" She stopped, as if she didn't know exactly who she was. "I'm Clara." Noah got back into the driver's seat, closed the door and turned the heater up to the maximum. In the rearview mirror, he saw that Clara was sitting right on the edge of the seat, as if she were ready to run at any moment. The dress was leaving puddles of water on the upholstery. "Where do you want to go?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Clara didn't answer immediately. She looked out the window at the darkness outside, then lowered her eyes to her own hands. They were trembling, not just from the cold, but from something deeper. "I don't know," she admitted finally. Noah frowned. What did she mean? She didn't know where she wanted to go. "Do you live around here?" "No." "Do you have family in the area?" "No." "Friends?" Clara closed her eyes and shook her head. Sophie turned around in the front seat, studying Clara with the natural curiosity of a 5-year-old. "Why are you wearing a princess dress in the rain?" she asked. "Did you lose your prince?" Clara closed her eyes for a moment, and Noah saw a tear roll down her cheek, mixing with the rainwater that still dripped from her hair. When she opened them again, they were shining but not with joy. "Something like that," she answered Sophie, her voice choked with emotion. Noah sensed there was a story there, and it probably wasn't a happy one. He decided not to ask any more questions for now. The woman was clearly distraught, and he didn't want to make things worse. "So look," he said, making a decision that might have been reckless but felt right. "It's very late, and you're soaked to the bone. Why don't you come spend the night at my house? Tomorrow, when the rain stops, we can figure out what to do." Clara looked at him in the rearview mirror, surprised and suspicious. "I can't accept that." "You don't even know me." "That's true, I don't. But my daughter is right. You look like a princess in distress, and every princess deserves a safe place to spend the night." Sophie clapped her hands, excited. "Yes, Clara can sleep in the guest room. Daddy, she can, right?" Noah laughed at his daughter's excitement. "Of course she can, but only if Clara wants to." Clara was silent for a long moment. Noah could see that she was fighting something internally. Pride, maybe, or fear, or both. Her hands squeezed and released the wet fabric of the dress in a nervous gesture. "Thank you," she said finally, so low that he barely heard her. The rest of the trip was made in silence, except for Sophie's occasional comments about the drawings she was making on the foggy window. Noah drove slowly, being careful on the wet curves, but his mind was racing. What had happened to that woman? Why was she alone in a wedding dress on a deserted road? Had she run away from her own wedding? Had she been left at the altar? The possibilities were endless, and all of them were disturbing. He looked in the rearview mirror again. Clara was leaning against the window, her eyes closed, but Noah was sure she wasn't asleep. There was a tension in her shoulders, a stiffness that spoke of someone who was fighting to hold herself together. When they finally arrived at the house, a 2-story building with a well-kept garden and a porch with a swing, The rain had slowed to a fine drizzle. Noah pulled into the garage and turned off the engine. "We're here," he announced. Sophie jumped out of the car as soon as he opened her door, eager to get inside. Clara got out more slowly, looking around cautiously, as if she still couldn't believe she was there. "Come on," Noah said gently. "Let's get inside before you freeze completely." The house was warm and inviting. Noah turned on the lights in the living room, revealing comfortable furniture, bookshelves filled with books, and Sophie's toys scattered on the floor. There were photos on the mantel, some of Noah and Sophie, others of a blonde woman with a sweet smile who was clearly no longer there. Clara noticed the photos, but didn't comment. Her eyes roamed the room, taking in the details of family life. Sophie's drawings taped to the refrigerator, the small shoes scattered by the front door, the colorful blanket thrown on the sofa. "Sophie, go brush your teeth," Noah said. "It's past your bedtime." "Oh, Daddy, Clara just got here. Can I stay up a little longer? You two can talk a lot tomorrow. Now it's time for bed." Sophie pouted, but she obeyed. Before going up the stairs, she approached Clara. "Good night, Princess Clara. Dream beautiful things." Clara knelt down to be at the little girl's height. "Good night, Sophie. Thank you for helping me today." "You're welcome." Sophie kissed Clara on the cheek and ran upstairs. When they were alone, an awkward silence settled in the room. Clara was standing in the middle of the room, dripping water on the rug, clearly uncomfortable. Her arms were crossed again in a defensive posture. Noah realized he needed to act. The woman was trembling so much her teeth were chattering. "You must be freezing in that wet dress," he said. "Let me get you something dry to wear." He quickly went upstairs to the bedroom he used to share with his wife. He opened her closet, which had remained practically untouched for the past 2 years, and chose a simple outfit, a pair of grey sweatpants and a white cotton shirt. These were clothes Emma liked to wear at home on lazy weekends. When he came back down, Clara was exactly where he had left her, as if she didn't dare to move. "Here," he said, holding out the clothes to her. "It's nothing fancy, but it's warm and dry." Clara took the clothes with both hands, as if they were made of crystal. "They were hers, weren't they?" she asked, looking at the photos on the mantel. Noah nodded. "They were Emma's. She wouldn't mind. In fact," he smiled sadly, "she would be mad at me if I let you stay cold." Clara hugged the clothes to her chest. "Kaz, thank you for everything. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "You don't have to repay anything. The guest room is at the end of the hall. It has its own bathroom. Make yourself at home." Clara headed for the hallway, but stopped at the living room entrance. "Noah," she said, turning around. "Yes?" "Why did you stop? Why did you help me?" Noah thought about the question. He could give several answers. He could say it was because of Sophie, that he was moved by compassion, that it was because any decent person would have done the same thing. But the truth was simpler and more complicated at the same time. "Because you needed me to," he said finally. Clara looked at him for a long moment, as if she were trying to see something beyond the words. Then she nodded and disappeared down the hall. Noah was left alone in the living room, listening to the sound of the rain easing outside. He looked at the puddles of water on the rug, the wet footprints on the floor, the trail that this strange night had left in his organized house. In 2 hours, his predictable life had been turned upside down by a woman in a wedding dress walking in the rain, and he had the strange feeling that nothing would ever be the same again. Noah woke up to the smell of fresh coffee wafting up the stairs. For a moment, half asleep, he had the strange sensation that Emma was in the kitchen making breakfast like she used to. But when the memory of the night before came back, he remembered Clara. He went downstairs in his slippers and found a scene he hadn't seen in 2 years. Someone moving around the kitchen before he woke up. Clara had her back to the door, wearing the grey sweatpants and white shirt he had lent her. Her blonde hair was in a simple ponytail, still a little damp from a morning shower. "Good morning," Noah said, stopping at the kitchen entrance. Clara turned around, holding the coffee pot. Her blue eyes looked less tired than the night before, but there was still a shadow of sadness in them. "Good morning, I hope you don't mind," she said, gesturing to the coffee. "I woke up early and thought I'd repay some of your hospitality. Of course I don't mind, thank you." Noah approached the counter where Clara had arranged the cups. She had found the sugar bowl and the milk. organizing everything in a way that reminded him of breakfasts when Emma was still alive. But there was something different in the air, a new energy he couldn't quite identify. "Where's Sophie?" he asked, noticing the unusual silence in the house. "Still sleeping. I peeked into her room about 20 minutes ago. She looks like an angel when she sleeps." Noah smiled. Sophie was always a restless child during the day, but at bedtime she turned into a porcelain doll. She's going to be so excited when she finds out you're still here. Last night she wouldn't stop talking about the princess who was staying at our house. Clara lowered her eyes, stirring her coffee more forcefully than necessary. "About that, I should be going. I've already taken advantage of your kindness enough." "Where to?" The question came out more directly than Noah intended. Clara stopped stirring her coffee and was silent for a few seconds. I still don't know. But I can't stay here forever." "No one said anything about forever, but you don't have to rush off either. At least have breakfast with us." Before Clara could answer, Sophie's footsteps echoed down the stairs. The little girl appeared in the kitchen, still in her pajamas, her blonde hair messy and her eyes puffy with sleep. "Clara!" she shouted, running to hug the woman around the waist. "You didn't leave?" Clara bent down to Sophie's height, returning the hug with a tenderness that made Noah's heart ache. "Good morning, little princess. Did you sleep well?" "I dreamed about you. You were in a beautiful castle and had a garden full of flowers. But you were sad because you had no one to play with." Clara and Noah exchanged a quick look over Sophie's head. There was something disturbingly accurate about the little girl's dream. "What an interesting dream," Clara said, pushing a lock of hair from Sophie's face. "But now I have you to play with, don't I?" "You do." Sophie clapped her hands. "Can we have breakfast together? Can you help me put butter on the bread? Daddy always puts on too little." Noah laughed. "Hey, I put on the right amount. You're the one who wants to eat pure butter." "That's not true," Sophie protested, but she was laughing too. Clara watched the interaction between father and daughter with a genuine smile, the first Noah had seen since he found her on the road. There was something maternal in her gaze, as if she were satisfying a longing she didn't even know she had. "Of course I can help you with the butter," Clara said to Sophie, "but you have to teach me how to do it the right way." Sophie took on the role of teacher, with a seriousness that only a 5-year-old can have. She explained to Clara the perfect amount of butter, how to spread it without tearing the bread, and where to put the jam so it looked like a rainbow. Noah watched them from the kitchen table, drinking his coffee and feeling something strange happening in his chest. The house, which for 2 years had seemed too big and too quiet, was suddenly full of life. Sophie's laughter echoed off the walls, mixed with Clara's patient comments and the sound of utensils being handled at the sink. "Done," Sophie announced, showing off her work of art, a slice of bread with butter and jam that looked more like an abstract painting. "Now it's your turn, Clara." Clara took a slice of bread and began to spread the butter with the same care Sophie had demonstrated. Her movements were delicate, almost reverent, as if this simple act was something precious. "Like this?" she asked, showing the result to Sophie. "Perfect. You're a super fast learner." Noah couldn't take his eyes off the scene. There was something mesmerizing about the way Clara interacted with Sophie, a naturalness that seemed to have been born out of nowhere. And there was something else. For the first time in a long time, his daughter wasn't asking about her mother during breakfast. "Daddy, can Clara have lunch with us too?" Sophie asked, already planning the next get-together. "See if she wants to," Noah said, looking at Clara. Clara hesitated, clearly torn between the desire to stay and the need to leave. "I don't want to get in the way of your routine." "What routine?" Sophie laughed. "We don't have a routine. Daddy always forgets to buy groceries, and we end up eating pizza or sandwiches." Noah blushed slightly. "Girls, that's not exactly true." "It is too. Last week we had cereal for dinner because there was nothing else in the fridge." Clara smiled, and Noah noticed it was a different kind of smile. It didn't have the sadness he had seen before. It was a smile of someone who was genuinely having fun. "Well, if that's the case, maybe I can help. I know how to cook a few things." "Really?" Sophie bounced in her chair. "What do you know how to make?" Lasagna, roast chicken, Apple pie. Sophie's eyes widened as if Clara had just promised to build a theme park in the backyard. Can we make apple pie? Please, please, please. Clara looked at Noah, silently asking for permission. I think we have apples in the pantry, he said, if you're sure it's not too much trouble. I'm sure. In fact, Clara lowered her voice, as if telling a secret. I'd love to do something useful. It's been a long time since I felt useful. There was a vulnerability in that confession that made Noah want to ask more, but he held back. Clara was starting to open up, and he didn't want to force the situation. After breakfast, Sophie dragged Clara into the living room to show her favorite toys. Noah took the opportunity to wash the dishes, but he couldn't stop watching the two through the open door. Sophie was telling an elaborate story about her dolls, and Clara was listening with full attention, asking questions and making comments as if it were the most important thing in the world. She has a natural gift, Noah murmured to himself. When he finished in the kitchen, he joined the two in the living room. Sophie was in the middle of a puppet show with her dolls, and Clara was sitting on the floor, watching with comical seriousness. "Daddy!" Sophie shouted when she saw him. "Clara said she can teach me how to braid hair. Will you let her?" "Of course. That would be great." Noah always struggled with Sophie's hair. He could do basic ponytails, but anything more elaborate was beyond his abilities. Clara got up and went to get a comb from the kitchen. When she came back, she sat behind Sophie on the sofa and began to comb her blonde hair with a delicacy that reminded Noah of Emma. "Your hair is beautiful, Sophie," Clara said, separating the strands. "Dye just like a real princess's." "Mommy always braided my hair," Sophie said, distracted. "But Daddy doesn't know how. He only knows how to do ponytails." Noah felt a pang in his chest. Sophie rarely talked about her mother so casually, and when she did, she usually got sad afterward. But now she seemed to be just sharing a memory, without pain. Clara didn't miss a beat. "And I'm sure your mommy made beautiful braids, and I bet she would be happy to know that you still like them." "You think so?" "I'm sure of it. Mothers are always happy when they see their children remember the good things." Sophie was silent for a moment, processing Clara's words. "Can Clara be our friend, Daddy?" she asked, turning to Noah. "If she wants to," Noah said, meeting Clara's eyes. Clara finished the braid and tied it with a hair tie Sophie had given her. "I would love to be your friend," she said, and Noah realized she was serious. The rest of the morning flew by in a way that surprised Noah. They watched cartoons, played a memory game, and Clara helped Sophie put together a puzzle that had been abandoned for weeks. The house was filled with conversation and laughter, a stark contrast to the silence that had dominated the last 2 years. Around noon, Sophie declared she was hungry, and Clara offered to make lunch. Noah protested weakly, saying she had already done too much, but Clara insisted. "Let me see what you have in the fridge," she said, opening the door and making a comical face. "Wow!" Sophie wasn't exaggerating about the food situation here. Noah laughed, embarrassed. "So I always mean to go to the grocery store, but then life happens," Clara finished understandingly. "Don't worry, I can work miracles with eggs and cheese." She prepared a perfect omelette, seasoned with herbs Noah didn't even know he had in the pantry. Sophie devoured it, praising every bite as if it were the best dish she had ever eaten. "You're an amazing cook," Noah said. And it was true. It had been a long time since he had eaten something homemade and made with care. "My grandmother taught me," Clara said, and for the first time, she mentioned someone from her life. She used to say that cooking was a way of loving people. "Your grandmother sounds wise." "She was." Clara smiled sadly. "She passed away a few years ago, but I still hear her voice every time I'm in the kitchen." Noah wanted to ask more about her grandmother, about Clara's family, about what had led her to that road the night before, but something in her tone of voice told him not to press. After lunch, Sophie dozed off on the sofa, exhausted from all the excitement. Clara and Noah sat on the porch, each with a cup of coffee, watching the garden that still showed signs of the night's rain. "She's a special little girl," Clara said, looking inside the house where Sophie was sleeping. "She is. She's my whole life." "Can I ask, what happened to her mother?" Noah was silent for a moment, stirring his coffee without actually drinking it. Cancer. 2 years ago, it was quick. I'm so sorry. Sophie was very young when Emma died. Sometimes I wonder if she really remembers her mother, or if she just remembers the photos and stories I tell her. Clara nodded, as if she understood perfectly. Memories are strange. Sometimes the most important ones aren't the ones you think you should remember. There was something in the way she said, that which made Noah suspect that Clara was speaking from personal experience. "And you?" he asked gently. "Do you have family?" Clara took a while to answer, and when she did, her voice was softer. "I did. But things changed." Noah waited, giving her a chance to continue if she wanted to, but Clara just took a sip of her coffee and changed the subject. "Does Sophie like to draw?" "She loves it. Her room is full of drawings taped to the wall. Maybe I can draw with her later. It's been a while since I've done that. I'm sure she would love that." They were silent for a few minutes, a comfortable silence that contrasted with the tension of the night before. Noah glanced at Clara. Wearing Emma's clothes, with her hair up and no makeup, she looked younger and more vulnerable, but there was a strength in her too, a resilience that he recognized. It was the same strength he had developed after losing Emma. "Thank you," Clara said suddenly. "For what?" "For letting me stay, for not asking questions, for letting me be useful today." Noah looked her directly in the eyes. "Thank you. It's been a long time since this house felt so alive." Clara smiled, and this time the smile reached her eyes. "Then maybe it's good for all of us." When Sophie woke up from her nap, she found the two of them still on the porch, talking about books and movies, discovering common interests and interesting differences. The little girl joined them, still sleepy, and settled onto Clara's lap as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Noah watched them both and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, the feeling that his house was complete again. He still didn't know who Clara was or what had brought her to them, but he knew that something had changed that day, something that went beyond the simple presence of a new person in the house. For the first time in 2 years, the future seemed full of possibilities. The afternoon sun filtered through the living room windows, creating golden stripes on the wooden floor. Sophie had finished lunch and was now running around the backyard, chasing butterflies with the inexhaustible energy that only 5-year-olds possess. Her blonde hair shone in the light, and her laughter echoed through the house. Noah and Clara were sitting on the back porch, watching the little girl play. There was a peace in the air that Noah hadn't felt in a long time, but also a subtle tension that he couldn't ignore. Clara was quiet, quieter than she had been all day. "She's tireless," Clara commented, smiling as she watched Sophie try to catch a blue butterfly that was flying in circles around the rose bush. "She's always been like that. Emma used to say that Sophie had enough energy to power a small city." Clara nodded, but Noah noticed that her smile wavered when he mentioned his wife. She was fidgeting with her hands in her lap, a nervous habit he had noticed a few times during the day. "Noah," Clara said suddenly, without taking her eyes off Sophie, "I need to tell you something." The tone of her voice made Noah's stomach clench. He turned to look at her directly. "What is it?" Clara took a deep breath, as if she were preparing to dive into deep water. "I'm just passing through. I won't be staying for long." Noah felt a pang of disappointment that surprised him. In just a couple of days, he had gotten used to Clara's presence in the house, the way she made Sophie laugh, the way the house seemed more alive when she was there. "Okay," he said, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Taika, where are you planning to go?" Clara shook her head slowly. "I don't know yet. I need to think about a lot of things, about what to do now." There was something in the way she said "now" that suggested a very clear before and after in her life. Noah wanted to ask more, but he remembered the promise he had made to himself not to pressure her. "You don't have to decide today," he said gently, "or tomorrow. You can stay as long as you need to figure out what you want to do." Clara looked at him with surprise, as if she didn't expect that answer. "Why are you being so nice to me? You don't even know me." Sometimes you don't need to know someone completely to know that they're a good person. Clara lowered her eyes to her own hands. "You might be wrong about me." I doubt it. You don't know what I did, or what I didn't do. Noah studied Clara's profile. There was pain there, a guilt that she carried like a weight on her shoulders. "So everyone has things they wish they had done differently," he said. "That doesn't make a person bad." Before Clara could answer, Sophie came running towards the porch, her hair disheveled and her cheeks red from running. "Clara!" she shouted, taking the steps 2 at a time. "Did you see? I almost caught the blue butterfly." "I did." "You were so fast," Clara answered, and Noah noticed how her voice changed completely, becoming lighter and warmer. "She was beautiful, right?" Sophie threw herself into Clara's lap without ceremony. "I think she was playing with me." "I'm sure she was. Butterflies love to play with special kids like you." Sophie smiled, satisfied with the explanation. "Clara, can you stay and play more? Please, we could make a sandcastle, or paint, or play with dolls." Clara looked at Noah over Sophie's head, her eyes filled with an emotion he couldn't fully decipher. There was desire there, but also fear. "Well," Clara began. "Please, please, please." Sophie clasped her hands in supplication. "Why, you're the coolest person I've ever met. Besides Daddy, of course." Noah laughed. "Thanks for the consideration, Princess." Clara was silent for a moment, clearly conflicted. Noah could see the internal struggle happening in her eyes. "Okay," she said finally. "So I can stay a little longer." Sophie screamed with delight and jumped off Clara's lap, already planning all the activities they would do together. "First we'll play house. You can be the mommy, I'll be the daughter, and Daddy can be—" She stopped, looking at Noah. "Daddy can be the daddy." Clara blushed slightly, but laughed. Sounds like a perfect plan." The next 3 hours passed in a blur of activities. Sophie dragged Clara into the backyard, where they built a house using fallen branches and leaves. Then they went back inside and made drawings at the kitchen table, with Clara showing Sophie how to draw more realistic flowers. Noah participated when called, but for the most part, he just watched. There was something mesmerizing about the way Clara interacted with Sophie. She didn't treat the little girl like a small, annoying child, but like a whole person, worthy of attention and respect. "Daddy, look!" Sophie ran to him with a drawing in her hand. Clara taught me how to make real petals." Noah examined the drawing. It was truly impressive for a 5-year-old. The flowers had a dimension and shading that Sophie had never achieved before. "It's beautiful, sweetie. You're a real artist." "Clara taught me. She knows how to draw everything." "Show him, Clara." Clara, who was putting away the colored pencils, hesitated. "It's nothing special." "Yes, it is," Sophie insisted. "Show him the drawing you made of our house." Clara picked up a paper that was face down on the table. When she showed it to Noah, he was speechless. It was a pencil drawing of their house, with a level of detail and skill that revealed real talent. "Oh my goodness," Noah said. "This is incredible." "Are you an artist?" Clara quickly shook her head. No, it was just a hobby. It's been a long time since I've drawn." "Well, you should start drawing again. You have a lot of talent." Clara put the drawing away without answering, but Noah saw that she was pleased with the compliment. When it was time for dinner, Clara offered to cook again. Noah protested, saying she had already done too much, but Clara insisted. "I like to cook," she said, "and you've been so kind to me. It's the least I can do." She prepared a simple but delicious dinner with the few ingredients Noah had in the pantry: spaghetti with homemade tomato sauce and a fresh salad. Sophie ate everything without complaining, which was practically a miracle. "Clara, can you cook for us always?" Sophie asked, wrapping spaghetti around her fork with her tongue out in concentration. "Sophie," Noah began, remembering the conversation he had with Clara earlier. "It's okay," Clara said quickly. "Sophie, I would love to cook for you always, but I can't stay here forever." Sophie stopped eating and looked at Clara with wide eyes. "Why not?" Clara looked at Noah, silently asking for help. He cleared his throat. "Sometimes people have to leave, Princess, even when we don't want them to. But I don't want Clara to leave." Sophie's voice went up an octave. "She's our friend. Friends don't leave." Clara knelt down to Sophie's height. "Sweetie, I don't want to leave either, but sometimes people have to do things they don't want to do. Why? It was a simple question, but Noah saw that Clara didn't have a simple answer. Because life is complicated sometimes. Sophie frowned, clearly dissatisfied with the explanation. Life doesn't have to be complicated. It can be simple, like today was simple. The simplicity of Sophie's observation seemed to hit Clara like a punch. Her eyes filled with tears, and she had to turn away to hide them. "You're right," she said, her voice choked. "So yes, today was simple, and it was one of the best days I've had in a long time." Noah felt his heart clench. There was so much pain in Clara's voice, so much loneliness. He wanted to ask what had happened to her, what kind of life she was living before she showed up on that road. But he knew it wasn't the right time. After dinner, they settled in the living room to watch a movie. Sophie chose a cartoon about a princess who gets lost in the forest and finds a family of bears who adopt her. Noah wondered if the movie choice had been a coincidence. Sophie settled between Noah and Clara on the sofa, using both of them as human pillows. In the middle of the movie, she fell asleep, her head on Clara's lap and her feet on Noah's. "She'll sleep anywhere," Noah murmured, quietly so as not to wake his daughter. "She's precious," Clara replied, running her hand through Sophie's hair with a tenderness that made Noah suspect she was used to children. They watched the rest of the movie in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. When it was over, Noah carried Sophie to her room and put her in bed, still dressed. She didn't even stir. When he came downstairs, he found Clara in the kitchen, washing the dinner dishes. "You don't have to do that," he said. "So I want to." Clara didn't turn around, keeping her hands busy with the dishes. "Noah, about what we talked about today. About you just passing through. Yes, I don't know how long I can stay. I don't even know if I should stay." Noah approached, grabbed a dish towel and began to dry the dishes she was washing. "Why shouldn't you stay?" Clara was silent for a long moment. "Because I'm afraid of getting used to this. To you. To the feeling of having a family again." The word "again" did not go unnoticed by Noah. "Did you have a family before?" "I thought I did." Clara scrubbed a plate more forcefully than necessary. "But I was wrong. About a lot of things." "Clara, I don't want to talk about it yet, please." Noah nodded, respecting her request. They finished washing the dishes in silence, a silence that wasn't uncomfortable, but was heavy with unspoken things. "Thank you," Clara said when they were done. "For what this time? For today, for letting me pretend that I belong somewhere. It's been a long time since I felt that way." Noah turned to look at her directly. "You're not pretending anything, and you do belong. For as long as you want to stay." Clara looked him in the eyes, and for the first time since he found her on the road, Noah saw something beyond pain and fear in her eyes. He saw hope. "I would like to stay one more day," she said, softly. "So if it's not too much trouble, it would be a pleasure." Clara smiled, and this time the smile was completely genuine. "Then good night, Noah." "Good night, Clara." He watched her go up the stairs, and when she disappeared to the second floor, Noah was left alone in the kitchen, thinking about the day he had just had. It had been different, full of life and laughter in a way he hadn't experienced in 2 years. And there was something else. For the first time since Emma's death, he didn't feel alone in the responsibility of caring for Sophie. Clara had naturally taken on the role of, well, he didn't know exactly what that role was, but he knew it felt right. Noah turned off the lights and went up to his room, with the strange feeling that his life was about to change again, and this time, maybe it would be for the better. The house was silent, enveloped in the peace that only comes after a full day. Sophie had bravely resisted sleep during the movie, but finally succumbed in the middle of a story Clara was telling about a brave princess. Noah carried her to her room, tucking her into bed with the care of someone who had done this ritual hundreds of times. When he came downstairs, he found Clara on the back porch, sitting on the swing that Emma used to use to read on summer afternoons. The moon was almost full, bathing the yard with a soft, silvery light. Clara was swinging slowly, her bare feet occasionally touching the wooden floor of the porch. "Is Sophie asleep?" she asked, without turning around. "They're like a rock." Noah approached, hesitating for a moment before sitting in the chair next to the swing. "She had a busy day." "We all did," Clara smiled, but there was something melancholic in her expression. "It's been a long time since I felt so normal." Noah studied her profile in the moonlight. There was a vulnerability in Clara when she thought no one was looking, a deep sadness that she hid very well during the day. "Normal how?" Clara stopped swinging and looked at her own hands, like I was a real person, like I could have a simple life, do simple things, like playing with a child or cooking dinner for someone. "Why didn't you feel that way before?" The question came out more directly than Noah intended. Clara was silent for so long that he began to think she wouldn't answer. "Because I lived trying to be someone I wasn't," she said finally. "Trying to fit into a life that was never really mine." Noah felt they were getting close to something important. Clara was starting to open up, and he didn't want to do anything to make her close off again. "What do you mean?" Clara sighed deeply, as if she were preparing to dive into waters she had been avoiding for days. "Have you ever had your heart broken, Noah?" The question caught him by surprise. He expected her to talk about her own pain, not to ask about his. "Yes," he answered honestly. "When Emma died, I thought I would never be whole again." "But that was different, wasn't it? You lost someone you truly loved. Someone who loved you back." Noah nodded, beginning to understand where Clara was going with this. "It's different when you discover that the person you thought you loved, who you thought loved you, never actually knew you, never wanted to know you." There was a bitterness in Clara's voice that made Noah's heart clench. "Clara, heartbreaks are funny," she continued, as if she hadn't heard him. "You always think it will hurt less with time, that one day you'll wake up and it won't matter anymore. But some heartbreaks, some stick to you like scars." Noah leaned forward in his chair. "What happened?" Clara looked at him, her blue eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You don't want to know, Noah. It's an ugly story, full of painful cliches you only see in bad movies." "Let me be the judge of that," Clara laughed, but there was no joy in the sound. "All right, but don't say I didn't warn you." She started swinging slowly again, as if the movement helped her find the words. "I was engaged. I was getting married 3 days ago." Noah felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. 3 days. Clara had only been walking on that road for 3 days. The wedding dress made sense now. "I was with him for 2 years, David." She pronounced the name as if it tasted bitter. "He is successful, charming. Everyone loved him. My parents loved him." Clara stopped swinging again and turned to look at Noah directly. "I was wearing my grandmother's dress. She had kept it for 50 years, hoping one of her granddaughters would wear it. It was perfect, you know, vintage, with delicate lace. I felt like a princess." Her voice began to crack, but she continued. "I was in the church hall waiting for my cue to walk in. My bridesmaids were with me. My best friend Sarah was trying to calm me down because I was nervous. Nervous because deep down I knew something wasn't right. But I thought it was just normal wedding anxiety." Noah wanted to say something, but he realized that Clara needed to tell the story her way, at her own pace. Sarah went out to check if everything was ready. She took longer than usual, so I decided to go look for her. I thought maybe something had gone wrong with the flowers or the music." Clara closed her eyes, as if she could still see the scene. "I found her in the pastor's office, with David. They were..." She shook her head. "It doesn't matter what they were doing. What matters is that when they saw me, neither of them seemed surprised or guilty. Sarah just said, 'Clara, we need to talk.'" Noah felt a low-level anger grow in his chest. What kind of person does that on their wedding day? "I found out they had been together for months, that David had proposed to me because his parents thought I would be a suitable wife for his political career, that Sarah, my best friend since childhood, had been in love with him forever and had finally worked up the courage back to fight for what she wanted." The tears finally began to stream down Clara's face. They had it all planned out. They were going to wait a few weeks after the wedding, and then Sarah would confess her feelings. David would file for divorce, claiming incompatibility. Everyone would take their side because it would be a great love story. they couldn't help but fall into. "Oh my God," Noah murmured. "Clara, I'm so sorry." The most pathetic part, I stood there, in my wedding dress, listening to them explain to me how naive I was, how I had never noticed that David didn't really love me, how I was convenient but not desirable. Clara's voice broke completely, and she covered her face with her hands. I ran, literally ran, in high heels and a wedding dress. I passed by the guests, who were all sitting there waiting for the ceremony to begin. I heard someone shout my name, but I didn't stop. Noah got out of his chair and sat on the swing next to Clara, putting an arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him, trembling with emotion. I got in the car and drove. I didn't know where I was going, I just drove. When I ran out of gas, I left the car in some town and started walking. I walked for 2 days. I didn't eat, barely drank water, I just walked. "That's when we found you," Noah said softly. I think I was trying to disappear. I didn't want to die, but I also couldn't imagine how to go home and face all of that. They were silent for a few minutes, Clara crying softly against Noah's shoulder. He didn't know what to say. "How do you comfort someone who has been so cruelly betrayed, Clara?" he said finally. "They are jerks, both David and Sarah, and you. You're so much better off without them." Clara pulled away a little to look at him. "How can you be sure? You've known me for 3 days. Because I see how you are with Sophie. I see how you treat people, how you care about returning kindness. I see that you have a huge heart and a capacity for love that they didn't deserve." Clara sobbed. "I feel so stupid. How did I not see it? All the signs were there. David always found excuses not to spend time with me. Sarah always made strange comments about our relationship. How could I have been so blind? Because you trusted them, and there's nothing stupid about trusting the people you love." Clara wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "What about you, Noah? You said your heart has been broken before. I mean, besides Emma's death." Noah hesitated. They had crossed a line tonight, sharing pains that are rarely revealed to strangers. But Clara didn't feel like a stranger anymore. "Not in the way you went through. Emma and I, we had a real love. But when she died..." He stopped, searching for the right words. "It wasn't just her that died, you know. A part of me died with her." Clara turned to face him completely. "What do you mean?" "For the last 2 years, I've just been existing. Taking care of Sophie, working, going through the motions of life. But I haven't been living. Not really." Noah looked at the moonlit backyard. "Sometimes I look at Sophie, and I see so much of Emma in her that it physically hurts. And other times I wonder if I'm being a good enough dad, if she's missing something important because I can't feel joy in the same way anymore. Noah, I love my daughter more than anything in this world. I would do anything for her, but for 2 years, I've felt like I'm watching life through a window, without being able to really participate." Clara took his hand. "But you do participate. I see how she looks at you. You are her world." "Maybe. But she deserves more than that. She deserves a dad who can really laugh, who has hope for the future, who is human." Clara finished softly. "Noah, you lost the person you loved most. It's normal that it's taken time to heal. And look," she squeezed his hand, "you helped me. A stranger on the road. That's not something someone who's just existing does." Noah looked at her, really looked. Even with eyes red from crying, even with the pain etched on her face, Clara was strong. She had survived a terrible betrayal and could still see kindness in others. "You know what's funny?" she said. And in the last 3 days and since I got here, I've felt more like myself than in the 2 years I spent with David. With you, I don't have to pretend to be someone I'm not." "What were you like with him?" "Well-behaved, submissive, always agreeing with everything. He would say that intelligent women were attractive, but only up to a point. That strong opinion scared people away." Clara laughed bitterly. "I even stopped drawing because he said it was a childish hobby." "That's ridiculous. Your drawing is incredible." "Is it? It's been so long since someone encouraged me to do something I love that I had forgotten what that felt like." Noah realized that they were still holding hands. He should let go, but he didn't want to. There was something comforting about the contact, a connection that went beyond words. "Clara, can I ask you a question?" "Of course." "What do you want to do now? You don't have to answer today, but where do you go from here?" Clara was quiet for a long moment. "Honestly, for the first time in years, I don't know. And it's scary, but it's also freeing. For 2 years, my whole life was planned. Wedding, house, kids, the career that would fit with David's. Now I can choose anything. And what is your heart telling you?" Clara looked at him, then at the house where Sophie was sleeping. "My heart is telling me that maybe I don't have to run away forever. That maybe there are people in the world who can accept me for who I really am." "There are," Noah said with certainty. "And you deserve people like that in your life." Clara smiled for the first time since she started telling her story. "You too, Noah. You deserve more than just existing. Emma wouldn't want to know that you stopped living because of her." Noah felt a pang in his chest, but not of pain. It was something different, as if a door that had been closed for 2 years had just opened a crack. "Maybe you're right. I am. And you know why? Because in the last 3 days I've seen you really live. When you laugh at the things Sophie says, when you cook with us, when you look at me like I'm a person worth knowing." Noah squeezed her hand. "You are worth it. So much." They sat on the swing, rocking gently in the moonlight. Two wounded hearts that had found in each other not a miraculous cure, but something perhaps more valuable, the understanding that it was possible to survive pain and still find moments of joy. "Noah, thank you for letting me tell you. It's been so long since I talked about it with someone who didn't judge. Thank you for trusting me. And Noah, yes, I'd like to stay a little longer, if you'll let me. Not forever, but until I figure out what to do." Noah smiled, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. "I would love for you to stay." When they finally went inside, the house no longer seemed the same. It was still the house where Noah had lived with Emma, where he had raised Sophie for the last 2 years. But now it was also the house where Clara had found refuge, where 2 wounded hearts had begun to heal. And for the first time in a long time, the future seemed full of possibilities. The following days brought a lightness that Noah hadn't felt in a long time. It was as if the heartfelt conversation that night on the porch had broken down an invisible barrier that existed between him and Clara. There was no more hesitation in her movements around the house, no more of that constant tension in her shoulders that he had noticed in the first few days. Clara was at the kitchen table with Sophie on a sunny Tuesday morning, surrounded by tubes of paint, brushes, and papers scattered everywhere. Sophie had woken up excited about the idea of making real art, as she called it, and Clara had suggested they paint with watercolors. "Look, Sophie," Clara wet the brush in a light blue paint. "If you mix blue with yellow, it turns green," Sophie shouted, excited, as if she had discovered the formula for happiness. "Exactly. And if you add a little bit of white, it gets lighter." Noah watched from the counter where he was making coffee, an involuntary smile forming on his face. Sophie had paint on her hands, on her face, and even in her hair, but Clara didn't seem to mind at all. In fact, she had a few colorful splotches on her clothes too. "Daddy," Sophie waved the brush in his direction, splattering green droplets in the air. "Come look, I'm painting our house." Noah approached, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Clara, who murmured a "thank you" without taking her eyes off Sophie's work. "Wow," Noah said, genuinely impressed. "It looks just like it." The paper showed a yellow house with a red roof, blue windows, and a giant green tree on the right side. It was clearly a child's drawing, but there was a fondness in the way every detail was painted. "Clara taught me how to make the windows shine," Sophie explained, pointing to small white dots on the glass. "And look," she turned the sheet over, "there are the 3 of us right here in front." Noah bent down to see better. 3 stick figures were positioned in front of the house, a tall, dark-haired one that was obviously him, a smaller one with long blonde hair that was Clara, and a tiny one, also blonde, who was jumping between the 2. "We're a family," Sophie declared, satisfied with her work. Clara froze for a moment, the brush suspended in the air. Noah saw an emotion flash across her face. Surprise, perhaps, or something deeper. It's beautiful, Sophie, Clara said, her voice slightly choked. You really liked it. I can make one just for you too. I would love that. Noah noticed how Clara said this with complete sincerity, as if there were no place in the world she would rather be at that moment. Later, while Sophie was taking her afternoon nap, Noah found Clara in the living room, organizing the drawings and paintings they had made that morning. She had created a small improvised clothes line with string between two chairs to dry the works of art. You have a natural talent for dealing with children, he commented, sitting on the sofa. Clara smiled, hanging up another drawing. Sophie makes everything easy. She's so open to the world, so willing to try new things. It wasn't always like that. After Emma died, she got very quiet for a while. She didn't draw, she barely played. Clara stopped what she was doing and looked at him. And now she doesn't stop talking, laughing, creating things. Noah paused. I think you brought back something I didn't even know was missing. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe you brought back something I had lost. They looked at each other for a moment, and Noah felt that silent connection that had become more and more frequent between them. It wasn't uncomfortable. In fact, it was the opposite. It was as if they could communicate without words. Clara, he began, but was interrupted by Sophie coming down the stairs, her hair still messy from her nap. Can I paint more? She asked, rubbing her eyes. Of course, princess, Clara laughed. But first, how about a snack? Sophie agreed animatedly, and the three of them headed to the kitchen. Clara prepared sandwiches while Noah cut up apples, and Sophie arranged the plates on the table. It was a simple domestic choreography, but there was something deeply satisfying about the way everyone knew exactly what to do. So, Sophie, Clara said, spreading butter on the bread, do you want to learn how to make cookies tomorrow? Real cookies, like the ones Grandma used to make. Clara hesitated for just a second before answering. Just like the ones my grandmother taught me to make. Yes, Sophie clapped her hands. Daddy, can you help us too? Noah pretended to think seriously about the proposal. Well, it depends. Will you let me lick the bowl? Duh, Sophie laughed. Everyone gets to lick the bowl. During the snack, Sophie chatted about the cookies they were going to make, the colors she wanted to try in her painting, and how she was going to teach Clara to play hide-and-seek in the backyard. Clara listened to everything with genuine attention, asking questions and making suggestions. Noah watched the interaction, feeling something strange happening in his chest. It was as if a part of him that had been dormant for 2 years was slowly waking up. It wasn't just about Clara, although she was certainly an important part. It was about rediscovering that life could be good again. After the snack, they returned to their painting session. This time, Clara suggested they make portraits of each other. I'm going to paint Daddy, Sophie announced immediately. And I'll paint you, Clara said to Sophie. And I. Noah looked around, realizing he had been left out of the assignment. I guess I'll paint Clara? Clara blushed slightly. You don't have to. I want to paint. Here it's been years since I've painted anything. You paint? Sophie asked, surprised. I used to, when I was young. I'm not very good, but anyone can paint, Sophie declared, with the absolute wisdom of a 5-year-old. Clara said the important thing is to have fun. Noah picked up a brush and a sheet of paper, feeling strangely nervous. There was something intimidating about trying to capture Clara on paper, as if he were trying to understand something about her that he couldn't yet express in words. He started with simple sketches, the shape of her face, the line of her hair. Clara was focused on painting Sophie, her tongue sticking out slightly in concentration, and Noah tried to capture that expression of serene focus. Daddy, you're painting Clara all serious, Sophie observed, peeking at his canvas. That's how I see her when she's concentrating. But she laughs a lot too. Paint her laughing. Noah looked at Clara, who was smiling, amused by Sophie's comment. Like that, Sophie said. Look how her eyes get all sparkly when she smiles. Clara genuinely laughed then, and Noah tried to capture that moment. The way her eyes lit up, the way her cheeks turned pink, the genuine joy in her expression. When they finished, they had an impromptu exhibition on the refrigerator. The portrait Sophie made of Noah was mostly a large round head with huge eyes and a smile that took up half his face. Clara's portrait showed Sophie with bright yellow hair and a dress that looked like a rainbow. And Noah's portrait, well, it wasn't perfect, but it had captured something essential about Clara: the kindness in her eyes, the quiet strength in her smile. "It's beautiful," Clara said, studying the drawing. "Is that how you see me?" "That's how you are," Noah replied simply. Sophie insisted that everyone sign their work and add the date. "So we can always remember this day," she explained. As they cleaned up the paint mess, Noah noticed how naturally Clara moved around the house. She knew where the cleaning rags were. She knew Sophie's routine. She anticipated what he would need before he even asked. "Clara," Sophie said, as they washed the brushes at the sink, "can you sleep in my room tonight? We can have a sleepover." Clara looked at Noah, silently asking for permission. "If it's not too much trouble," she began. "Of course it's not too much trouble. Sophie would love it." "Yay!" Sophie jumped. "We're going to braid each other's hair and tell spooky stories." "No spooky stories," Noah said quickly. "Otherwise you won't be able to sleep." "Then princess stories." "I can tell princess stories," Clara agreed. That night, after Sophie and Clara had settled into the little girl's room with extra blankets and flashlights to create a sleepover atmosphere, Noah was left alone in the living room. But for the first time in 2 years, he didn't feel lonely. He could hear laughter coming from upstairs, voices whispering secrets, the sound of 2 people who were genuinely having fun together. And there was something else, a feeling of completeness he hadn't experienced since before Emma died. Noah looked at the drawings on the refrigerator, especially the one Sophie had made of the 3 of them in front of the house. "We're a family," she had said. And maybe, Noah thought with a smile on his face, maybe she was right. Clara woke up before dawn, lying on the floor of Sophie's room on an improvised mattress of blankets. The little girl was sleeping soundly in her bed, one arm thrown out and her blonde hair spread on the pillow like sunbeams. The sleepover had been a success. They had painted each other's nails, told stories about brave princesses, and whispered silly secrets late into the night. But now, in the quiet of the early morning, Clara felt a familiar weight settling in her chest. It was the same fear that had accompanied her for so many years, the same one that made her question every moment of happiness. She got up carefully, trying not to wake Sophie, and went to the window. The backyard was bathed in the soft light of dawn, and she could see the garden where they had played the day before, the picnic table where they had had their snack, the swing where she and Noah had talked on that night that changed everything. 1 week. It had only been 1 week since Noah and Sophie found her on the road, but it felt like a lifetime. A good life, a life she never imagined she could have, and that was exactly what scared her. Clara went down to the kitchen, made coffee, and sat at the table where there were still some drawings from the day before. She picked up the portrait Noah had made of her and studied the image. He had painted her smiling, with sparkling eyes and an expression of contentment that she barely remembered having. Was that how he saw her? As someone happy and whole? The problem was that she was starting to see herself that way too. And every time she caught herself laughing with Sophie or exchanging fond glances with Noah, an insistent voice in her head whispered, "It will end. It always ends. You're going to get hurt again." "Good morning." Noah's voice made her jump. He was at the kitchen entrance, his hair messy and wearing an old t-shirt, but smiling in a way that made her heart flutter. "Good morning," she murmured, trying to hide the turmoil in her thoughts. "I made coffee." "Thank you." He served himself and sat across from her. "Sleep well? Did Sophie kick you during the night?" Clara forced a smile. "She sleeps like an angel," she barely moved. Noah studied her for a moment, and Clara knew he had noticed that something was different. "Are you okay?" "I am." The answer came out too quickly, too artificial. They drank coffee in silence, but it wasn't the comfortable silence of the last few days. There was a tension in the air that Clara hated, but couldn't avoid. "Clara," Noah leaned forward, his eyes fixed on her. "Mum, what's going on?" Before she could answer, Sophie appeared in the kitchen, still in her pajamas and with a pillow mark on her face. "Good morning," she sang, running to hug Clara. "The sleepover was the best of my life." Clara returned the hug, feeling a painful pang in her chest. How could she even think about leaving this little girl? How could she hurt someone so pure and loving? "I had a great time too," she said, kissing the top of Sophie's head. "Are we going to make cookies today?" Sophie asked, settling into the chair between Clara and Noah. "You promised yesterday." "Of course," Clara answered automatically, but her voice sounded distant. Sophie pouted. "You're not excited. Don't you want to make cookies with me anymore?" "It's not that, sweetie. Clara looked at Noah, then at Sophie, feeling cornered. "Of course I want to make cookies with you." But all morning, as they mixed ingredients and cut the dough into fun shapes, Clara caught herself observing every detail as if she were trying to memorize it. The way Sophie bit her tongue when she was concentrating, the way Noah made more of a mess than he helped, the way the three of them worked together in a harmony that felt natural, organic. "Clara," Sophie said suddenly, interrupting her thoughts, "are you going to stay with us forever?" The question dropped like a bomb in the middle of the kitchen. Noah stopped kneading the dough and looked at Clara, waiting for her answer. "Sophie," Clara began, her voice failing. "I was just thinking," Sophie continued, unaware of the storm she had created. "You can be like a mommy to me. Not the same as my real mommy because she's in heaven, but like a second mommy. And you and Daddy can get married, and then we'll be a real family." Clara's heart stopped. She looked at Noah, who was as red as a tomato, and then at Sophie, who was smiling hopefully. "Sophie," Noah said quickly, "things don't work that way." "Why not?" Sophie asked, genuinely confused. "You like each other, I like both of you. We're happy together. Why can't it be like this forever?" Clara felt panic rise in her throat. It was exactly what she feared. Sophie was getting attached, Noah was getting attached, and she was getting attached too. I need some air," she murmured, quickly leaving the kitchen. Clara went to the back porch, trying to breathe. Sophie's words echoed in her mind. Forever. Real families saw her get married. It was what she wanted. God, how she wanted it. But the fear was stronger. The fear that one day Noah would wake up and realize she wasn't good enough. The fear that Sophie would grow up and not need her anymore. The fear that the happiness she felt was just an illusion that would end in pain, as it always did. Noah appeared a few minutes later, sitting next to her on the swing. "Sophie's finishing the cookies by herself," he said gently. "She said she's going to make a surprise for you." Clara didn't answer. She was looking at the horizon, trying to find the courage to do what she knew needed to be done. "Clara, about what Sophie said, she's just a child," Clara interrupted. "She doesn't understand how things really work." "And how do things really work?" Clara turned to look at him, and she saw something in his eyes that made her melt and despair at the same time. "Things end, Noah. They always end. And the longer I stay, the more it's going to hurt when it happens. Who says it has to end? Experience, life, the fact that I'm not." She stopped, struggling to find the right words. "I'm not the type of person who can keep good things. I always do something wrong, I always mess things up." Noah took her hand. "Clara, look at me." She reluctantly met his eyes. "You haven't messed up anything. You brought life to this house. You brought joy to my daughter. You brought something to me that I thought I had lost forever." "Noah, let me finish." His voice was firm, determined. "Since Emma died, I've just been existing, going through the motions, taking care of Sophie, but not really living. You changed that. You made me remember that it's possible to be happy again." Clara felt tears forming in her eyes. "You don't understand. I'll disappoint you. I'll disappoint Sophie. It's what I do. It's what I've always done." "No." Noah held her face in his hands. "You saved us, Clara. The three of us. Sophie is happier than I've seen her in 2 years, and I'm falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them. Clara felt as if the world had stopped spinning. "Don't say that," she whispered. "Why not? It's the truth. Because I'll have to leave." "Why do you have to leave?" "Because I'm scared. The confession burst out of her. I'm scared of getting attached and then losing everything again. I'm scared of not being good enough. I'm scared that you'll realize you made a mistake. Noah pulled her into a hug, and Clara allowed herself to cry against his chest. Clara, he murmured into her hair. Everyone gets scared. I'm scared too. I'm scared of not being a good dad to Sophie. I'm scared of not being able to make you happy. I'm scared that you'll realize we're just a widower and a little kid with very little to offer. Clara pulled away to look at him. You have everything to offer. You're perfect. We're not perfect. We're just a family trying to figure out how to work. And it would be so much better if you were a part of it. What if it doesn't work out? What if it does? Clara closed her eyes, feeling the beat of Noah's heart against her cheek. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be part of a real family. Neither of us does. We'll figure it out together. They stayed in an embrace for a long moment until they heard footsteps running through the house. Clara, Daddy. Sophie appeared on the porch, holding a plate of cookies. Look what I made. The cookies were shaped like hearts, decorated with pink and yellow icing. In the middle of the plate, there was a larger cookie with 3 stick figures drawn in icing. It's us, Sophie explained proudly. A cookie family. Clara looked at the cookie, then at Sophie, then at Noah. The pure simplicity of the child, the way she saw the world without complications, without fears, just with love. Sophie, Clara said, her voice trembling. Can I ask you a question? Of course. Do you really want me to stay forever? Forever and ever and ever. Sophie jumped, spilling some cookie crumbs. Can you, Clara, please? Clara looked at Noah, who was smiling through his own tears. If Daddy lets me, she said finally. Of course I will, Noah replied, pulling them both into a tight hug. Sophie screamed with delight. The cookies flew into the air, and Clara finally understood what it meant to be home. It wasn't a place, it was a feeling. It was belonging to someone and having someone belong to you. It was love. Just like that. So it's decided, Sophie said, wiggling out of the hug and running back into the house. I'm going to make more cookies. We have to celebrate. Noah and Clara were left alone on the porch, holding hands, watching Sophie dance around the kitchen through the window. Are you sure? Clara asked one last time. Absolutely, Noah replied, kissing her forehead. Welcome to the family, Clara. And for the first time in her life, Clara knew she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The morning sun entered softly through the guest room window, creating golden stripes on the floor. Clara woke up with a different feeling in her chest. It wasn't the tightness of anxiety that had accompanied her for weeks, nor the emptiness she felt when thinking about the future. It was something new, it was peace. She got up and looked out the window. Sophie was already in the garden, still in her pajamas, chasing a yellow butterfly that danced among the flowers. Her blonde hair shone in the sun, and she laughed every time the butterfly changed direction. Clara smiled, put on a pair of jeans and a simple shirt, clothes Noah had bought for her, and went down to join the little girl. Good morning, Princess, she said, stepping out into the garden. Clara, Sophie ran to her, her bare feet wet with dew. Look, the butterfly is playing with me. I think she knows we're going to be a real family now. Clara laughed, picking Sophie up and twirling her around. Could be. Butterflies are very smart. And you're not leaving anymore. I'm not. I promise. Sophie hugged her tightly, and Clara felt something click into place in her heart. This was it. This was what true love felt like. Let's play tag, Sophie declared, getting down from Clara's lap. You're it. Clara pretended to be a terrifying monster, running after Sophie in the garden. The little girl shrieked with delight, hiding behind trees and changing direction every time Clara got close. The garden was filled with happy laughter and screams. Help! Sophie shouted, running towards the house. The monster's going to get me. What monster? Noah appeared at the back door, holding a cup of coffee and feigning surprise. Clara. She turned into a tag monster. A monster? Noah made a face of fake horror. This is very serious. I think I know how to defeat this monster. How? Sophie asked, hiding behind her dad's legs. With tickles. Noah joined the game, running after Clara. No, Clara pretended to run away. But my weakness has been discovered. Noah caught up to her and started tickling her, and Clara collapsed on the grass, laughing so hard she could barely breathe. Sophie joined the attack, and soon the three of them were rolling around in the garden, in a tickle war that had no winners or losers. "Stop!" Clara shouted between laughs. "I surrender. The monster has been defeated." They stopped, all out of breath and with grass stains on their clothes. Sophie was lying between Clara and Noah, looking at the blue sky through the tree leaves. "This is the best morning of my life," she declared. Clara turned her head to look at the little girl, then looked at Noah, who was smiling in a way she had never seen before. It was a complete smile. "For me too," Clara said softly. "For me too," Noah agreed. They lay on the grass for a few minutes, just existing in that perfect moment. Sophie pointed to the clouds, inventing stories about the shapes she saw. "Look." Sophie pointed to a heart-shaped cloud. "Even the sky knows we love each other." Clara felt her eyes fill with good tears. Tears of gratitude, relief, pure happiness. A gentle breeze passed through the garden, and Clara noticed that some clouds were forming on the horizon. "I think it's going to rain," she observed. "Bad rain or good rain?" Sophie asked. "What do you mean?" "Daddy taught me that there are two kinds of rain. The bad rain, that makes us sad, and the good rain, that helps the flowers grow." Clara thought about the question. The last time it had rained, she was walking alone on a dark road, broken and without a destination. Now she was lying on the grass with the two people she loved most in the world. "Good rain," she said. "Definitely good rain." They went inside when the first drops began to fall. In the kitchen, Noah made hot chocolate while Clara and Sophie organized the drawings from the last few days. Sophie insisted on taping them all to the refrigerator. "Clara," Sophie said suddenly, "where's your pretty dress?" Clara stopped what she was doing. She had almost forgotten about the wedding dress, stored in the room since she had arrived. "Now it's put away," she said. "Can I see it?" Clara looked at Noah, who nodded encouragingly. "Of course, sir. Let's go upstairs." In the guest room, Clara opened the closet and took out the dress. It was clean and neatly folded. Noah had sent it to a specialized cleaner without her knowing. "Wow," Sophie murmured, touching the fabric delicately. "It's the most beautiful dress I've ever seen. It was my grandmother's dress," Clara explained. "She wore it when she married my grandfather, a long time ago. And now..." Clara picked up the dress and held it to her chest. "Now it's just a memory of a day that started out very sad, but that brought me to you." "You don't want to wear it anymore?" Clara thought about the question. The dress represented so many things, her broken hopes, her pain, but it also represented courage, the courage to run away from a life that wasn't hers. "Maybe one day," she said. "Yeah, but when I wear it again, it will be for real love, like the love you have for Daddy." Clara blushed but smiled. "Like the love I have for Daddy and for you." Sophie hugged Clara's leg. "I love you too, so much." Noah appeared at the bedroom door at that moment, carrying 2 mugs of hot chocolate. "I asked, what are you two talking about up here?" "About Clara's dress," Sophie explained, "and about real love." Noah looked at Clara, who was still holding the dress, and understood the importance of the moment. "It's a beautiful dress," he said gently. "My grandmother always said this dress brought good luck." "I think she was right." "What do you mean?" "If I hadn't worn this dress that day, if I hadn't run away from that wedding, I would never have found you." The rain started to fall harder outside. Sophie ran to the window to watch. "Look, it's a happiness rain." Clara carefully folded the dress and put it back in the closet. It was part of her history now, but no longer her future. "Can I say something?" Noah said softly, just for Clara to hear. "Of course." "Thank you." "For what?" "For staying, for letting us love you, for giving us a chance to be a family." Clara took his hand. "Thank you, for showing me that I deserved to be loved, for giving me a home." Sophie turned from the window and ran to them. "Let's go downstairs. I want to drink hot chocolate and watch the rain from the porch." On the back porch, The three of them settled onto the swing, Sophie between Clara and Noah, all covered by a warm blanket. The rain was falling gently, creating small puddles in the garden and making the flowers dance. "You know what I think?" Sophie said, taking a sip of her hot chocolate. "What?" Clara and Noah asked at the same time. "I think the rain brought Clara to us, and now it's happy because we're together." Clara looked at the rain, then at Noah, then at Sophie. 3 weeks ago, she was walking alone on a dark road, lost and broken. Now she was sitting on a cozy porch, surrounded by love and safety. "You're right, Princess," she said. "The rain brought us luck." The drizzle continued all afternoon, but they didn't mind. They stayed on the porch, talking, laughing, making plans for the future. Sophie talked about school. Noah mentioned the possibility of renovating the attic to create an art studio for Clara. Clara talked about maybe going back to school, about dreams she had set aside. When the rain finally stopped, the sun appeared between the clouds, creating a perfect rainbow over the garden. "Look!" Sophie shouted. "Ours, it's a family rainbow," Clara laughed, pulling Sophie and Noah into a tight hug. There on the porch, under the rainbow after the rain, the three of them hugged, not as strangers who had met by chance, but as a family that had found each other when they needed it most. And Clara finally understood what